You want to get into Stanford University as a first-year student? I want to help you do it. My name is Craig Meister. I'm a college admissions coach. You can learn more about me and also learn how you can work with me one-on-one throughout the entire college admissions process over at my website, collegemeister.com. Tip number one, below this video, there's a link to my classic article, How to Get Into the Ivy League Ethically. I want you to read that article very carefully because it sets the table for you beautifully so that by the first day of your senior year, if you follow all the advice given in that article, you will be well positioned to seal the deal with Stanford as a high school senior. That article not only discusses some rules of the road so that you can make the most of your overall college application process, it also gives you tips on how you can make the most of high school generally. And that's going to be really important for you because if you're going to be the most compelling applicant for Stanford, your college application process really starts the summer before your ninth grade year in high school. You want to make the most of all the time given to you from the summer before ninth grade all the way through the moment you hit submit on your college application to Stanford as a high school senior if you're going to give yourself the very best shot of getting in. And that article is going to help you conceptualize the ways in which you can do just that. Tip number two, when you apply to Stanford is important. If it is truly your first choice school, then I would strongly recommend that you apply to Stanford Restrictive Early Action. This is non-binding early action. However, in so doing, restrictive early action, you are going to surely limit yourself in terms of where else you can apply in the early rounds of admission, that same admission cycle. So for instance, you cannot apply to any other early action schools that are private in the United States at the same time as you're applying restrictive early action to Stanford. You also cannot be applying anywhere early decision at the same time as you're applying restrictive early action to Stanford. So I strongly recommend that you are sure that Stanford is truly your first choice because you're going to be losing a lot of other early opportunities by applying to Stanford Restrictive Early Action. But the upshot is that statistically your shot of getting in is slightly better. So therefore, I want you to strongly consider restrictive early action if your goal is, above all else, to get into Stanford University as a first-year student. Tip number three. Below this video, there's a link to my How to Build an Extraordinary Extracurricular Resume short course. The reason why this short course, which is less than an hour in length and only costs a few dollars if you rent it or buy it, is so important for you. It's so important for you because many Stanford applicants are frankly impressive human beings, not just impressive students. And therefore, they are going to take every opportunity necessary to differentiate themselves and share with the Stanford Admissions Committee all the juicy details about what makes them special. And in many cases, this overlaps with their extracurricular portfolio or their basic extracurricular resume. Now, many applicants who are just following the rules when applying to Stanford are going to fill out the Common Apps activities page, and you should absolutely do that. However, you can and you should go beyond the activities page and produce a 650-word resume about yourself that goes into greater depth and breadth about the extracurricular activities that you're most proud of. And those details, of course, are not going to fit on the activities page of the Common Application because you're very limited by character count. So in the additional information section of the Common Apps writing page, I want you to be able to plug in a 650-word resume about yourself. And this is going to, again, go above and beyond what you can do in the activities page of the Common Application. My How to Build an Extraordinary Extracurricular Resume short course is going to teach you the style, the formatting that you need in order to produce an extraordinary extracurricular resume that you can plug into that very additional information section of the Common Apps writing page so that you can at least go to sleep on the night that you've submitted your Stanford application knowing that you've given it your very best try. You've given it the old college try, as they say, in order to share with Stanford admissions officers the information about you that is most compelling vis-a-vis your extracurricular output throughout your high school career. Again, I cannot recommend that How to Build an Extraordinary Extracurricular Resume course enough for Stanford applicants because even though other schools like Penn and Brown allow you to upload a full-fledged unabridged extracurricular resume to their supplements, Stanford doesn't allow you to do that, but the types of students applying to Stanford are just as impressive as other Ivy League level applicants. So many of them are going to have a lot to share, and if you are one of those students, you sure as heck better try to share it, even if it does not fit into that activities page of the Common Application. My next tip has to do with the actual supplement for Stanford University on the Common Application. There are little nooks and crannies of this supplement that I want to go over briefly with you today to help you further improve your chances of getting into Stanford beyond just simply saying that you're applying restrictive early action. I would also highly recommend that you take advantage of the opportunity to engage in an optional interview. The question exists on the Stanford supplement of, would you be interested in a Stanford admissions interview if it is offered to you later in the application process? There is no reason why you should say no. There's simply none. It can't hurt you to not take part in an interview, but it can certainly help you to take part in an interview. You'll learn more about Stanford. Stanford will learn more about you. So it's a win-win. Please take advantage of the opportunity to engage in an optional interview. You're not promised an interview, but by saying you would like to take part in one or you're interested in one, that right there, I think, is a really important step for you psychologically, but also it opens up the opportunity for you to learn more about Stanford and for Stanford to learn more about you. So again, I think that could be a huge boon for you if you take advantage of it. By not taking advantage of it, I just don't understand why anyone wouldn't want to take advantage of it. So please say yes to that question. My next tip has to do with the actual short questions on the supplement for Stanford University. There are a few. The first short question is, what is the most significant challenge that society faces today? The next one is, how did you spend your last 2 summers? The next one, what historical moment or event do you wish you could have witnessed? And the next one is, briefly elaborate on one of your extracurricular activities, a job you hold, or responsibilities you have for your family. And finally, the last one is, list 5 things that are important to you. For each of these questions, you only have 50 words. So I don't want you to treat it like an essay. It is not an essay. It is a sentence or 2 max. Therefore, you really need to just be most careful about being authentic. Be as honest as you possibly can be, and also think about how can you set yourself apart. Now, obviously, you could answer these questions with any number of answers, but you really should think from the perspective of what makes me most unique and which of the answers that I'm considering providing are probably the most unique. Because again, Stanford gets a lot of applications. And so you're trying to differentiate yourself positively throughout every step of this application process. For you to provide an answer that could be given by hundreds, if not thousands of other applicants is probably not the best idea. Therefore, again, I really want you to think long and hard about being authentic. That's most important. But then beyond being authentic, what is a response that you can give that will be truly originally you? Sort of a signature response that only you could give based off of your value system, your character, your priorities, your mindset, your personality. That's the type of response I would encourage you to give for all of these questions. You only have 50 words, so the only other big tip I would give for all of them is don't have grammar issues, don't have syntax issues, don't have spelling issues. Make sure you proofread this carefully, that you're using proper English in your responses. All of them should be written in full sentences except for the last one, which asks you to list 5 things that are important to you. But beyond that, you should be providing full sentence responses to these questions, and you should be, again, using proper capitalization where appropriate, spelling always, and syntax, grammar always. Otherwise, just be who you are, but be the most true version of yourself. And if you are, you're going to shine as a true individual who is memorable when the full admissions committee gets together to potentially debate your application if it comes to that. Then finally, my last tip relates to all of the short essays that you're going to be having to complete this year for Stanford University. There are 3 in the 2023-2024 admissions cycle, and I want to go over those in some depth. The first is, the Stanford community is deeply curious and driven to learn in and out of the classroom. Reflect on an idea or experience that makes you genuinely excited about learning. So on this particular one, I encourage, again, you to be authentic. I always do. And honest and truthful. Those are all words that are sort of synonyms, but sort of not. They sort of overlap, but be all of those things. But the big sort of extra tip I would give for you here, in addition to, of course, having a one-sentence introduction/thesis, a paragraph of a body that follows, and then a one-sentence or so conclusion, because you only have 250 words total, is I want you to try, and this only happens through successful drafting, I want you to try to not only reflect on an idea or experience that makes you genuinely excited about learning. Maybe that will have to do with your major. In most cases, it will. But I also want you to try, if at all possible, by the end of your body paragraph. So that would be roughly 150 words or so in, maybe 175 to 190 words in. You should try at that point, no later, to connect whatever the idea or experience is that makes you genuinely excited about learning to how this would metastasize, how this would play out for you should you become a Stanford student. So let's say, for instance, you're really interested in military ethics. I'm just making that up. Let's say you're really interested in about the ethics of the military. You can write about why you're interested in learning about that, why it excites you, and you should write about that in the first half of the response in particular. But by the second half of your body, you should try to then segue into showing how you will continue to grapple with that subject and learn about that subject in particular at Stanford in a way that you couldn't do so if you were applying to Yale or Harvard or Princeton. You get the point. You really do want to try to use this, at least passive-aggressively a little bit at the end, as a why Stanford essay. Again, you need to still respond to the prompt and do it well. But if you do so efficiently and effectively, like all of my students will, you're going to get to the point where you can also start connecting the dots between you and Stanford and you, so that you're going to be able to really communicate to the admissions officers that you've given this a lot of thought, and that Stanford is a necessary stop on your journey to becoming the best expert that you possibly can be, in that case on military ethics. But whatever the case may be, you can substitute your interest for the one I just gave, and you can still make a compelling case for why you genuinely get excited about that particular idea or experience, but also how you could continue doing so as a Stanford undergraduate. I'll also say that the conclusion should not just restate the thesis or anything stated already in the body. It should say something new and mature and thoughtful and reflective, ideally, so that you leave them just wanting that much more of you. But a successful Stanford applicant is not going to just rewrite this intro in different words. That is a waste of words, a waste of space. Make sure you go out with a bang on this first and all, frankly, Stanford short essay responses. Again, you only have 250 words for that one, and you only have 250 words for the next two as well. The second prompt is as follows. Virtually all of Stanford undergraduates live on campus. Write a note to your future roommate that reveals something about you or that will help your roommate and us get to know you better. I would actually write this as a letter. There are a few supplemental short essays that are prompted like this, and this is one of the ones where I would not write it like a traditional mini essay. I would write it more like a letter, where Dear John or Dear Future Roommate. You get my point. And write it like people used to write letters back in the day when they didn't have Snapchat and all these other messaging apps, where like it's a formal, nice letter. It's short but sweet. So write it like a letter. But also in terms of structuring the body, you still want to structure it in a measured, organized, methodical way, and share, I would say, depth over breadth, quality over quantity should you be your goal here. And what I mean by that is you can't share everything about you. So I'd rather you share one or two interesting, almost maybe eccentric things about you that are still compelling and attractive to mainstream audiences, and or mainstream intelligent audiences like the admissions officers will be at Stanford, who want to get to know something new about you that we wouldn't already have gleaned about you if we looked you up on Facebook or if we looked you up on Google, or that in the case of the admissions officers, they already know about you from reading the rest of your application, including your Common App essay. Don't repeat anything that you're sharing elsewhere in your whole application in this letter. Otherwise, you wasted an opportunity to really differentiate yourself positively. Again, I know that your future roommate will not be reading your full application to college, but the admissions officers will be. So you can't repeat anything elsewhere in your application. Instead, you need to say something new and compelling that is also impressive and thoughtful and would make you more enticing to be a roommate than less enticing to be a roommate, ideally, because you don't want to repel anyone with your response here. So even if there are some eccentric things about you that you really want to share, if they're going to turn someone off, I would probably not mention those things. I would mention things that are unusual about you, and maybe, like I said, even eccentric, but that are attractive and would make you endearing, that much more endearing to your future roommate. So that person would want to live with you for the next year at least. And of course, so that Stanford would want to have you as a member of their community for the next 4 years. Otherwise, just keep the grammar, the spelling, everything good throughout, everything right throughout. Should you have a thesis? Could you have a thesis in the first sentence or two after your dear roommate? Yeah, you could, but letters are not as structured as traditional essays. And traditionally, you're writing a personal persuasive essay here. This is sort of a personal persuasive essay dressed up as a letter. But I'm not going to say you must have a thesis statement in your first paragraph or first sentence or two, because it depends on how you flow with your letter writing. But otherwise, again, just make sure that you become more attractive by the end of the letter and not less attractive. That is the key of how you would want to approach this particular prompt on the Stanford supplement to the Common Application. And then finally, please describe what aspects of your life experiences, interests, and character would help you make a distinctive contribution as an undergraduate to Stanford. Here again, you have another opportunity to share yet another facet of yourself, another aspect of your character. We are all made up of our experiences, our values, our genetic input. You can go hog wild on whichever one you want to really write about here, as long as you're able to draw a straight line with words from whatever life experience, interest, or element of your character you feel like would be something that would then show itself, like I said earlier in prompt number 1, as in impacting your behavior as an undergraduate at Stanford University. Structure this like a traditional little miniature essay, a one or sentence or two intro with a thesis, a body paragraph or so where you're proving your thesis, and then a conclusion sentence or two that goes a step beyond the thesis and goes a step beyond the body and says something new. But you can point to any element of your character. You could talk about your race. You could talk about your sexuality. You could talk about your sex. You could talk about your nationality. But you could also talk about another passion that you have for things that are not necessarily academic, but are that really central to who you are and what you think about on a daily basis. So, like I said, you can go hog wild. Anything is fair game as long as you can draw a straight line between describing what that experience, interest, or element of your character is and how it will help you make a positive and distinctive contribution to the university that is Stanford. Okay, that's really the key here. Is you can't just say something unusual or eccentric about yourself and hang your hat on that alone. So you just can't talk about the fact that you are half Argentinian, half Kenyan, and that you've grown up in China, and that is alone enough to accept you to Stanford University and have you make a unique contribution. No, you have to then explain how having this sort of hybrid personality, growing up with a parent that is from Kenya, a parent that is from Argentina, and growing up in China, how those three things fuse and how they will specifically fuse and in what ways they will as a Stanford undergraduate. So you need to try to really hang your hat on specific details of what you're going to be doing on campus that students who don't have that unique background, if that's the background you choose to talk about, are not going to be interested in doing. And therefore, you're going to be doing your own thing. You're going to be marching to the beat of your own drummer, but also making a positive impact in the lives of individuals around you and on the life of the overall university as a result of what you choose to, like I said, hang your hat on in the body as proving the thesis that you're going to state in the intro. Okay? So all of us can do this, even if we have not grown up in China and don't have a Kenyan parent or don't have an Argentinian parent. We can all do this regardless of where we're from, because we really have to look at ourselves in the mirror before we write this response and think, what from my past and present is going to impact my behavior in the future at Stanford in a distinctive and, like I said earlier, positive way. And then you have to get into detail. Don't talk in generalities. Don't talk in abstractions. Get into the weeds. Get into the details specifically. And generally speaking, because you only have 250 words, again, I would make the argument that quality is better than quantity in terms of things you need to cover because you only have 250 words. And therefore, depth is far more impressive in this response than breadth. My name is Craig Meister. I hope you have stayed with me till the very end. Stanford is a hard school to get into. You could theoretically do all the things I've recommended in this video and then some and still not get in. And don't worry, if that ends up happening to you, you at least gave it the old college try. Stanford, frankly, just accepts a handful of every 100 students who apply. So it's extremely rare to get into Stanford. But I at least know this. Having listened to this video and doing everything I've said in this video, including that article that I said to read, some of which maybe you haven't done in the past throughout your high school career, maybe you should have, but if you can watch this video in 9th grade, you're going to be extremely well positioned to get in as a 12th grader. If you can watch this video even as a 12th grader, you've at least given yourself the best possible opportunity today to get into Stanford whenever you should apply as a applicant, whether it be restrictive early action or as a regular decision applicant. I wish you the very best in your process, and I also hope you stay safe and you stay well. If you want to learn more again about how you can work with me, my name again is Craig Meister. You can go to my website, collegemeister.com. If you like this video and you don't want to work with me, that's okay, no hard feelings. Please give this video a thumbs up nonetheless, and also subscribe to my channel. Tell your family and friends about it because maybe they too could benefit from not only this video, but my back catalog of videos that cover a lot of other colleges as well as other tips related to how to make the most of your college admissions process so that it ends with tears of joy and not tears of sadness. My name's Craig Meister. Stay safe, stay well, and finally, most importantly, I will re-emphasize it. I wish you the very best of luck getting into Stanford University.